True valor isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward even when the neon lights flicker and fail. Witness the incredible bravery of ordinary souls who stood tall against the crushing weight of a cold digital world. Hit that subscribe button now and find your own courage.
My name is Raymond Caldwell. Most people who know me just call me Ray. I'm 63 years old, and I spent the better part of 35 years behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler, hauling freight up and down every interstate in this country. I've seen things on the road that would make your hair stand up. Blizzards in Montana, flash floods in Tennessee, a jackknifed rig blocking the whole of I-40 at 2 in the morning. I thought I had seen just about everything a man could see in this life. I was wrong. What I found inside my own home, in the bedroom of my 9-year-old son, on a Tuesday night in the middle of November, that is something I will carry with me until the day I leave this earth. So if you're settling in to listen, I need you to take a breath first. Because what I'm about to tell you is not easy. None of it is. But I'm telling it because someone has to. And because staying quiet was never something I was built for. I retired early. 59, bad knee. Doctor told me I was done with long haul, or I'd be done with walking. Took the pension, sold the rig, came home to our house in Clarksville, Tennessee, and for the first time in decades, I was just a man, with time on his hands and a family to be present for. My wife, Denise, had been holding things together for years while I was on the road. She raised our son Marcus almost by herself for the first few years of his life, and I will never stop being grateful for that. Marcus was our surprise, born when I was 54. Denise was 50. The doctors called him a miracle. We called him ours. Denise's mother, Gloria, moved in with us about 2 years after Marcus was born. She was 76 at the time, sharp as a tack, walked without a cane, cooked better than anyone I ever met, and had an opinion about absolutely everything. Gloria had raised 4 children of her own, buried 1 husband, and had what she called old-fashioned values about raising kids. I didn't always agree with her methods, but she was family, and this was her daughter's home, so I kept my thoughts to myself most of the time. For the first few years, everything seemed fine. Marcus was a happy kid. He loved baseball, hated math, had 2 best friends named Tyler and Jerome, and called me Daddy Ray like it was the most natural thing in the world. He was loud and goofy, and always had a grass stain somewhere on his clothes. He was the kind of kid who made you feel like the world was still a decent place. Then something changed. It started small, the way these things always do. I noticed it first in the mornings. Marcus used to come bounding down the stairs by 7, ready to eat everything in the kitchen before the sun was fully up. But sometime around his 8th birthday, the mornings got quiet. He started coming down late, moving slow, sitting at the breakfast table with his chin in his hand and his cereal going soggy while he stared at nothing. I asked him, "You sleep all right, son?" He'd say, "Yes, sir," without looking at me. I asked him if something happened at school, if Tyler and Jerome were still his friends, if there was a teacher giving him trouble. He always said no. Everything was fine. And then he'd push his bowl away and ask to go watch TV. By the time he turned 9, the changes weren't small anymore. He had circles under his eyes that no 9-year-old should have. He stopped asking me to play catch in the backyard. He flinched once, and I mean he physically flinched, and stepped back when I raised my arm to reach for something on the top shelf of the pantry. That moment stopped me cold. I stood there with my hand on a box of crackers and watched my son press himself against the wall, and something in my chest went ice cold. I brought it up to Denise that night, after Marcus went to bed. "He's just going through a phase," she said. She didn't look up from her phone. "Boys his age get moody. It's normal. Flinching isn't moody," I said. "Flinching is fear." She put her phone down then and looked at me, and there was something in her eyes I couldn't read. Not quite guilt, not quite worry. Something in between. Something that didn't settle right with me. She said, "Ray, you're overthinking it. He's fine." I let it go. I shouldn't have, but I did. A week later, my brother called from Louisville. He'd had a fall, cracked 2 ribs, needed somebody to drive him to his follow-up appointments and help around the house for a few days since his wife was recovering from knee surgery herself. I told Denise I'd be gone 4 or 5 days. Tops. I kissed Marcus on the top of his head that morning, told him to be good, and climbed into my truck. I was halfway to Louisville when I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a mistake. Not going to help my brother, that was right, but leaving Marcus behind with that look still in his eyes. That look kept riding shotgun with me the whole drive. That evening I was sitting in my brother's living room after dinner, and I made a decision. The next day, before I did anything else, I was going to order a camera. One of those small wireless ones that connects to your phone, no bigger than a smoke detector. I'd read about them online some months back and thought nothing of it at the time. Now I ordered one with 2-day shipping, sent it to the house, and asked Denise to just leave it on the front porch when it arrived. Told her it was for the backyard, to keep an eye on the property since we'd had some mailbox issues on our street. She didn't question it. The camera arrived. I called Marcus and walked him through exactly where to set it. I told him it was a surprise for Mommy, a little joke, and he liked that idea enough to follow my instructions carefully. He put it on the bookshelf in his room facing his bed just like I asked, and he covered the little indicator light with a piece of electrical tape like I told him to. My boy was smart. He did it perfectly. That night I checked the app on my phone. The picture was clear. The first night, nothing happened. Marcus got into bed at 8:30, read a book for 20 minutes, and was asleep by 9. I watched the footage the next morning while my brother was still asleep and felt foolish. Maybe Denise was right. Maybe I was overthinking. The second night, I almost didn't check. I'm glad I did. At 11:47 in the evening, the door to Marcus's room opened. I watched my phone screen with one eye half closed, expecting to see Denise coming in to check on him. Maybe pull his blanket up. The figure that came through the door was not Denise. It was Gloria. She was wearing her housecoat, the blue one with the white trim she always wore after dinner. She moved slowly but deliberately, and she went straight to Marcus's bed. She grabbed his shoulder and shook him awake. I watched my son sit up, startled, confused, and even through the small phone screen I could see him go rigid the moment he realized who it was. What happened next made me set my phone down on the bed and put both hands over my mouth. Gloria reached down and pulled him up by the arm, hard enough that he stumbled. She was talking. I couldn't hear it clearly at first, and then I turned the volume all the way up. Her voice was low, almost a hiss. She was telling him he had been disrespectful at dinner, that he had not finished his food, that a boy who wastes food is a boy who does not deserve comfort. And then she hit him. Not a slap on the hand. She hit him across his back, open-palmed, twice, and he bit down on his own lip to keep from making noise. He had done this before. He knew how to stay quiet. He had learned. I sat in my brother's guest room at midnight and shook. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. I watched Gloria point her finger in Marcus's face for another 2 minutes. Watched my son stand there in his pajamas, nodding at whatever she was saying, and then she left. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed for a long time after she closed the door. He did not lie back down right away. He just sat there, hunched over, in the dark. I called Denise. She picked up on the third ring, groggy. I told her to go somewhere she could talk privately. She said she was in the kitchen, and then I told her what I had just watched. There was a long silence. "Ray, how long?" I said. My voice came out low and quiet in a way that scared even me. "How long has your mother been doing this to our son?" Another silence. "Longer this time. She doesn't mean it the way you're thinking," Denise said, and her voice broke on the last word. "She was raised that way. She thinks she's helping. She thinks you're too soft with him and that—" "Denise." I stopped her. "How long?" She started crying. And when she answered, it was like the floor dropped out from under me. She said she had known for several months, that her mother had talked to her about it, told her Marcus needed stronger discipline, told her that Denise was too permissive, too modern, and that she was just doing what she had done with all 4 of her children. Denise said she had tried to tell her mother to stop. She said her mother didn't listen. She said she didn't know how bad it had gotten. She told me to calm down, that if I came home in this state I would make it worse, that her mother would deny everything and there would be no proof and it would be chaos. I told her I had the footage. She went quiet again. I sat on that bed until 3 in the morning thinking. My whole body was telling me to get in the truck right then and drive those 2 hours home and pull my son out of that house. But there was another voice, slower, colder. The voice that had kept me alive on icy roads for 35 years, telling me to stop and think before I moved. If I showed up at midnight and confronted Gloria, she would lawyer up, deny it. And Denise's conflicted loyalty would muddy the water. Marcus would be caught in the middle of a storm I hadn't fully prepared for. I called the only lawyer I trusted, a man I'd known since high school, and left a message at 3 in the morning because I didn't know what else to do. He called me back by 7. I told him everything. He told me not to go home yet. He told me to save every second of footage I had, to back it up to a cloud account immediately, and to call the Tennessee Department of Children's Services before I made any other move. He told me that what I had was real evidence, and that real evidence was worth more than a confrontation. I did everything he said. I sat on my hands for 26 of the hardest hours of my life. My lawyer filed an emergency petition. A DCS investigator was dispatched. I drove home the following afternoon, and when I walked through that front door, Marcus ran to me and wrapped both arms around my waist and didn't let go for a long time. I held him and looked over his head at Denise, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with red eyes, and then I looked past her to where Gloria was sitting at the kitchen table with her hands folded, like she was waiting for Sunday service to begin. She looked at me like she had done nothing wrong, like she had been tending to this house and this family and doing the Lord's work, and I was the one who had lost his mind. The DCS investigator arrived within the hour. I had already sent the full footage to my lawyer and to the investigator's office. When the investigator asked to speak with Marcus alone, I sat in the hallway outside his room and listened to my son, in a small, careful voice, describe what had been happening for the better part of a year. 11 months. He had been enduring this for 11 months, and every morning he had come down to that breakfast table and said he was fine because he had been told clearly, repeatedly, that what happened in this house stayed in this house. Gloria had told him that. She had told him that if he spoke about it, no one would believe a child over a grandmother. She had told him that his father was a soft man who didn't understand what real discipline looked like. She had made herself a wall between my son and anyone who might help him. Denise cooperated fully with the investigation. She gave a recorded statement that night. She described conversations with her mother going back nearly a year, times when Gloria had told her Marcus needed to be broken of his stubbornness, times when Denise had pushed back weakly and been overridden. Denise was not a cruel woman. She was a woman who had spent 50 years afraid of her own mother, and she had let that fear make her complicit in something she never should have allowed. That is not a small thing. I am not pretending it is. Gloria was removed from our home that same evening. She was charged with child abuse. Because Denise had known and failed to report or stop it, she was also cited, though the charges against her were lesser. My lawyer made sure the record reflected that Denise had cooperated immediately and fully, and that Marcus had expressed that he did not want to be separated from his mother. The court took that into account. The weeks that followed were the hardest kind of quiet. Marcus had a therapist named Dr. Anita Webb, who he started seeing twice a week, and she told me early on that children who endure sustained abuse often show their healing slowly, in small things, before you see it in the big ones. She told me to watch for small things. I watched. 3 weeks after Gloria left the house, Marcus asked me to play catch in the backyard. We threw a baseball back and forth for 40 minutes in the November cold, neither of us saying much, and it was the best 40 minutes I had had in longer than I could remember. A few days later, he ate a full breakfast without being asked. He laughed at something on TV, real, uncalculated, kid laughter, and the sound of it went straight through me. He stopped flinching when I raised my arm. The legal process was slow and often exhausting, Gloria's attorney argued that she had used reasonable discipline based on how she was raised, that it was a generational difference in parenting philosophy, that no lasting physical harm had been done. My lawyer played the footage. The judge watched it without expression, and then asked the defense attorney if they had anything further to say. The defense attorney had nothing further to say. Gloria received a conviction, probation, given her age and health, but a conviction on the record. A conviction that meant she could not live in any home with minor children. She would never be alone with Marcus again, for as long as she lived. I am not a man who believes in revenge for its own sake. I drove trucks across this country for 35 years, and I learned somewhere along the way that anger burns fast and leaves nothing but ash. What I believed in, sitting in that courtroom, was not revenge. It was a line. A line that exists in every decent society that says, a child is not a place to put your frustrations. A child is not a project to be broken and rebuilt to your specifications. A child is a person with a nervous system and a memory and a heart that absorbs everything you do to it. And those things do not simply wash off when the bruises fade. My son is 10 now. He still sees Dr. Webb, though less often. He made the baseball team at school last spring and went 2 for 4 in his first game, and I was there in the bleachers in a folding chair with a thermos of bad coffee and my heart so full I could barely see straight. He talks to me now, actually talks, tells me things about his day, complains about homework, gives me a hard time about the music I play in the truck. He is becoming himself again, or maybe becoming himself for the first time. A self that was put on hold while he survived something no child should have to survive. Denise and I are working through it. There is no clean word for what we are doing. We are in counseling together and separately. Some nights are better than others. Some conversations are still very hard. I do not know yet what our marriage looks like on the other side of all this. What I know is that Marcus comes first, and she knows it too. And on that, at least, we are completely aligned. If you are watching this and something about it sounds familiar, not the details, but the feeling of it, the quiet mornings, the flinching, the child who says, he is fine in a voice that sounds like practice, please do not wait as long as I did. Do not tell yourself it is a phase. Do not let anyone in your family, no matter how old they are or how long they have been part of your life, tell you that what you are seeing is normal, is discipline, is love expressed in a language you just don't understand. You understand. You already know. Trust what you know. The warning signs are never invisible. They are just easy to explain away. One small thing at a time, until you realize how many small things you explained away and how long you let it go on. Watch the mornings. Watch how your child holds their body when a certain person enters the room. Watch who they are relieved to see leave. Children do not lie with their bodies the way they sometimes do with their words. Their bodies tell the truth, and the truth is always there if you are willing to see it. My name is Raymond Caldwell. I am 63 years old, and I was not there when my son needed me the most. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure he knows that I am here now. That is all I have. That is everything I have. And for Marcus, I believe it is enough. If this story helped even one person see what they needed to see, then it was worth telling. Share it with someone who needs it. You might not know who that is, but they are out there, and they are hoping someone will say the words out loud before it is too late. Thank you for listening.